And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by ShazQuest. And ShazQuest writes, "Hey, John, Tenet just hit over 200 million at the worldwide box office." Yes, it did. "But I saw that Variety state that the break-even point is around 400 and needs closer to 450 million for a profit with a $200 million budget." And by the way, if Variety did say that, Variety is incorrect. It's going to need a bigger number than that. But what are the chances of Tenet entering the profit zone? I loved Tenet and I've seen it 5 times in IMAX so far because I am from Montreal. And of course, you guys in Montreal, you of course have your movie theaters open, unlike us guys here in Los Angeles, unfortunately. And yes, one of the things that happened this week is Tenet has crossed the $200 million mark. Not bad, all things considered with the pandemic. A lot of people still don't even know the theaters are open, restricted capacity, all that sorts of stuff. The first Penguin in the Water's made 200 million worldwide so far. Now remember, this thing's going to stay in theaters for a while, not to mention the fact that major markets like California, New York State, places like these are still pretty much, for all intents and purposes, they're not open yet. They're only slowly starting to reopen right now. We'll have to see what it is. But it did just make 6.7 million this past weekend at the North American box office. It did significantly better overseas, but only 6.7 at the domestic box office. This is not great news for them. And I think it speaks to a couple of things. Number one, I think it's great that it's crossed the 200 million mark. Honestly, if you had told them 3 weeks before dropping this thing that by this point it would have made 200 million, I don't think they'd be dancing any jigs, but I think they go, all right, that's not completely unexpected, all things considered, when you take all the circumstances into consideration. There are even analysts, Rob, as being reported in the Hollywood Reporter, analysts who are saying everything they're seeing is a positive indication. They believe that everything that we're seeing, if you read through the article, that yes, a lot of people still don't even know the theaters are open. Some people still just a little bit nervous, but people just slowly starting getting over there, going to theater, blah, blah, blah. They say right now everything's kind of a positive indication, and that's fine. That's fine. But I also believe there's one other challenge that Tenet is going to be facing here, which I think is part of the reason why you're looking at a 6.7 million, which only represents a 29% drop from the previous weekend proper. And that's not bad in and of itself. But honestly, Rob, I think one of the problems and challenges they're going to be facing is something that you and I, my friend, never would have thought would have been one of the challenges, which is it doesn't have the best word of mouth. People who are seeing Tenet, and I have now seen Tenet. I went out to Orange County, went out to see Tenet, and I honestly, I got to be truthful here, Rob. I thought a lot of people might be exaggerating how bad sometimes the sound mix in the movie is and how difficult in some scenes it is to make out what characters are saying. I honestly thought people may be exaggerating a little bit. It's very much a problem. Now, there are some scenes in Tenet, Rob, and I don't think you've had a chance to see it yet yourself.
No.
There are some scenes in Tenet where you can tell, okay, in this scene, we are clearly not meant to understand what a certain character is saying. There are those scenes. There are a couple of scenes in the movie where we're not supposed to be able to clearly understand what somebody else is saying. The problem is there are other scenes where we clearly are supposed to understand what's being said, and it becomes problematic. And I think a lot of people have unfortunately walked out of that theater. See, I was sitting there, I said this in my review, Rob, I'm watching this movie, I'm like, there is a brilliant movie on screen. But because I didn't hear what they were talking about in the last scene, I have no idea what's going on in this scene. You know what I mean? And so there were times in the movie that I felt like I was playing catch up with the movie, which takes away from your overall enjoyment. And I think there's a lot of people who just came out of Tenet going, yeah, it wasn't for me. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know what was happening and blah, 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 blah. And we're hearing a lot of people saying you got to see it twice to really get what it is that's going on. And I think that is hurting it. And so while everybody is talking about pandemic, understandably so, I think the inconvenient truth here is also a part of the lack of momentum building for a film like Tenet is the fact that it's just simply not getting the raving word of mouth that we have expected from a master like Christopher Nolan to have. So, and I don't believe it's the only thing, right? I believe there's a grand, big collection of things. And while I agree with a lot of the stuff, like what the Hollywood Report, hey, this is all still good signs right now for the future health of where we're going. They actually upgraded AMC's stock as a result of these numbers. Hey, that's great. I'm not discounting any of that. I'm not. I'm just saying here is, underneath all the other problems, I think there's also a small problem of the fact that this is simply not a movie that a lot of people who are seeing it are telling all their friends that you also must run out and see this. And that's unusual for a Christopher Nolan movie. Normally, Christopher Nolan movies, all you gotta do is get a few people to see it, and then they're gonna be raving to everybody about having to rush out and see it. And I just don't know that Tenet is gonna get, or is getting, that sort of response. Rob, we are, as you and I both point out all the time, we are in unprecedented circumstances. So normal rules do not apply. I would argue normal watermarks also don't apply. But you see a number, even given the current circumstances, like a 6.7 million over the past weekend, still making it number one at the box office, and crossing 200 million. What's your overall feelings on this with everything you're seeing right now?
Well, I think it's disappointing. Unfortunately, this movie, I expected it to be a kind of mind-blowing crowd pleaser the way Inception was. I mean, Inception made almost $900 million worldwide, and it became kind of a water cooler event. You know, people would go to Inception, they would debate Inception. They're still debating Inception a decade later. You know, is that top still spinning? Is Dom still in the dream world? I mean, who knows? Well, I think that this film, from everything I've read, again, I have not seen it, so I can't make a final decision. But, once something's gone into the pop culture and you can read different points of view and you can sort of gauge the zeitgeist around it, I think this film has been ultimately disappointing. And it hasn't lived up to what it promised the public. And when you have a film that is so densely packed with exposition about what's actually happening, that, again, you can't hear it. And I understand what Nolan's going for, the verisimilitude of reality, and I get all that. But the problem is, when we go to movies, the last place in the world that I think auteurist directors should use as something to create a reality is to have people speaking and then not being able to understand them. We have the best sound mixing technology that's ever existed in human history. And to have a movie where your characters aren't heard, I think, now this is just my opinion, and somebody who's worked a lot in post, you got to make people, when they speak, and especially when they're talking about dense dialogue that deals with the plot and the actual machinations of what's actually happening, if your audience isn't with you and is asking themselves at any one point in the movie, wait, what did he say? You've got a problem. And I think that's sort of infected the word of mouth of this movie, because a lot of people are talking about this. There's articles being written about how you can't hear and how this is a trait that goes all the way back to Dark Knight Rises for Christopher Nolan. And I think it's problematic. And I think you're right. I think that this movie failed to light the imagination of the worldwide audience on fire the way they hoped it would. And that's a problem.
I let me throw in something about Tenet that I have not said yet, and I've been meaning to say this. I like the trailers for Tenet. Having watched the movie, the trailers for Tenet, now that I've seen the movie, are far more brilliant than I realized. It's like, after you see, and it's hard to explain why without giving away spoilers. Yeah. But when you see the movie and then you reflect back on the trailer, you go, oh my God, what they did with that trailer was brilliant. Because I will tell you this, without giving any details of the movie away. You watch that trailer, you do get a sense of what the movie's about. You get a sense of what the general thing that's going on is. They leave some mystery to it, though. Like, they don't answer all the questions in the trailers, which they shouldn't. And it's all true. But there's a whole nother side to this movie that they don't give away in the so the trailers absolutely speak to the identity of the movie. It absolutely does. But it still holds back some major overall narrative things that were not revealed in the trailers at all. And it was after seeing the movie that I went, holy shit, I really respect the trailers for Tenet now. And I wish I came out of the movie really being more overwhelmed by Tenet. I need to see it again. I do need to see it again. So I think Ann and I are going to we're going to run out to Anaheim and go watch it again. But we will see. That's where I went to go see it, by the way. I went out to go watch it in Anaheim. It was a good experience, by the way. We went to the Orange 30. The Orange 30 in Anaheim, not far from Disneyland. Anyway, guys, question is, what do you think about where we're at with Tenet right now? Crosses 200 million, but still not doing so great domestic. What do you attribute that to more than other things? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.